Installing control horns may not be the most exciting part of building an airplane, but do it wrong, and flying it can get way more exciting than we want it to. All the hardware Hangar 9 sent along is first rate, and I used every bit of it. Had a couple of very common shop tools, and we got everything we need to install these control horns. We need to rough up the glue surface on fiberglass control horns, and this rasp does a good job of that. And it's just a plain rasp. There's nothing fancy about it or expensive. This is the flat side of it. It makes it easy to get a good scratch pattern and keep it all straight. Doing it this way produces scratches that are parallel with the wood surface, and that increases the bond a little bit. This is the pull horn for the rudder, and that only has a glue surface in the middle. Using the rounded side of the rasp makes this a lot easier. And I go back to the flat side to do the plates that go around the control horns. We have to remove the covering from beneath the plate, so I trace it and then cut around just inside of those lines. It's just a regular ink pen, and the lines come off of the covering with alcohol easily. I go over the covering here with an iron before I make the cuts, just to be sure. And after I peel away the covering, I'll go back over it with the iron if any of the edges look at all loose. Ironing the edges down once more only takes a minute, but it can save a lot of grief later when you try and shrink the covering tight. I carve a little point on a popsicle stick and use that to run epoxy down into the slots. It's real hard to get too much epoxy in there and real easy to get too little. Sometimes I surround this area with masking tape if it's at all hard to get to, but this is all out in the open. It's real easy to clean up with alcohol on a paper towel afterwards. I put the plate on the control horns and then use that popsicle stick to butter all the edges of the control horns. You need to get a nice coat of epoxy on everything. Notice I already have a ball link bolted between the control horns. That not only makes sure that my horns are always aligned perfectly, but it's easier to work with a dual control horn this way. Sometimes you have to work the control horns a little bit or push the plate down to get everything seated. I only mix enough epoxy for a couple of sets of these control horns so I don't have to rush. To make sure that the control horn spacing is right, I run the bolt down until it just seats. We don't have to tighten it up a bunch, just seat everything. We install the rudder pull horns the same way, but it's important that we match up our servo arms with the rudder horns. We want the cables separated by the same amount at the rudder and at the servo control horn. This is a 3-inch servo arm that the instruction manual for the timber calls for. The outer holes in the servo arm are very close to the outer holes in the rudder control horn, so that's where I'm going to put everything. There's nothing difficult about installing the control horns on this timber or any other plane. Just take your time and get plenty of glue spread over all the surfaces.